Good morning and welcome to our Zoom worship service. I am Ginger Yoder, your Director of Family Ministries, and I'm going to be serving as your celebrant this morning. And first, we have a couple of announcements. First, I'm so excited to announce that this afternoon between 2 and 4, we're offering a special sneak peek preview tour of the building. And there's a couple of slots left. So there's room next Sunday too, if you can't do it this Sunday. And you can find the link in the Sign Up Genius. We'll put it in the chat. We also sent an email and it's on Facebook. And the building is just absolutely stunning and phenomenal and exciting. And so please, if you can make it, it's worth a tour. Plus you'll get to talk to the knowledgeable people who can answer all of your questions. We're going to begin our service by acknowledging the land on which our homes and our church were built. They were not uninhabited when European settlers arrived here with their ideas of conquest and ownership. For those of us who live in Moscow, Pullman, or other nearby communities, we live on the ancestral homelands of the Nimipu, called the Nez Perce by the French-speaking traders, the Palouse, and the Shishun't, called the Coeur d'Alene. If you are joining us from another place, I encourage you to discover who inhabited or moved through the place where you now live in the times before colonization and genocide, and where they are now. We pause to remember that we live on ground that is sacred, ground that was stolen, ground that cries out for justice and for responsible stewardship. May our remembering help us find the courage to do our part to restore wholeness to the earth and all her peoples. Today, we're also going to light a candle not just for Ukraine, but for people everywhere who are suffering because of armed conflicts in Asia, Africa, South America, the Middle East, some of whom get quite a lot less attention than the war in Ukraine, but none of which are any less devastating. 46,000 people have died in war so far this year, and countless others have been impacted, injured, forced to flee their homes. This is a lot to hold, but we can do it together. Will you pray with me? May the day soon come when all the people choose generosity over greed, compassion over aggression, creation over destruction. We pledge our minds, our hands, and our bodies to the cause of peace, remembering, as Lao Tse taught, peace between the nations begin with peace in our hearts. Amen, and blessed be. And now let's join our voices together for our words of welcome, chalice lighting, and sung affirmation. Welcome to you, old friends and new, young and old. You are an essential part of our celebration today. Whether today is your first or your 1000th Sunday in our midst, we are stronger because you are with us. We are one people of many beliefs, identities, origins, sexualities, and genders. We are all growing, all learning, all loved. Body, mind, heart, and spirit, just as you are welcome here. We're hoping that everyone has a chalice to light or a candle to light and something to light it with. Let's light our chalices together. Hello, I'm Ginger Yoder, and I am going to light our chalice this morning. In the light of truth and the warmth of love, we gather to seek and seek to share.
From all that dwell below the skies, let songs of hope and love arise. Let beauty, truth, and good be sung in every land by every tongue.
Good morning, everyone. Today's service is dedicated to the memory and enduring legacy of Gloria Jean Watkins, better known to the world by her pen name, Bell Hooks. For those of you who may be less familiar with her work, Hooks passed away in December last year at the tragically early age of 69. She was a college professor, scholar, author, feminist, and social activist. Her writing explored the interconnectivity of race, class, and gender, and the ways in which these social identities produce and perpetuate systems of oppression and domination. One of her significant contributions to contemporary social thought, which has resonated deeply with me, is the framing of social justice work, particularly anti-racism, within an ethic of love, specifically self-love. Like other visionary anti-racist scholars and activists, Hooks believed powerfully in the transformative potential of self-love to heal and bring peace and compassion, both to ourselves and to our relationships with others. I've been exploring her work on love with a small group of other white feminists engaged in a process of unlearning and relearning within an intentional community of anti-racist practice. Much of what she writes about calls to mind our UU values and principles, which are also firmly grounded in love. At a time when our history, when our interactions, whether interpersonal, societal, institutional, or structural, are so often contentious, divisive, and marred by pain and suffering, Hooks shares why framing our actions in love is so important. She writes, I feel our nations turning away from love. Turning away, we risk moving into a wilderness of spirit so intense we may never find our way home again. I write of love to bear witness both to the danger in this moment and to call for a return to love. Redeemed and restored, love returns us to the promise of everlasting life. When we love, we can let our hearts speak. Today's service is a love letter to Bell Hooks and to this beloved community, a call to action to the compassion and care that she believed were the cornerstone for transforming our world. So let us sing our opening hymn. Now let us sing.
Now let us sing,
Sing to the
sing, sing, sing. Now let us sing,
Sing to the
sing,
Father,
sing,
faith
sing.
within.
Lift up your voice, be not afraid. Now let us sing to the power of the faith within. Now let us sing,
Sing to the
sing,
Father,
sing,
hope
sing.
within.
Now let us
Sing
sing,
to the
sing,
Father,
sing,
hope
sing.
within.
Lift up your voice, be not afraid. Now let us sing to the power of the hope within. Now let us sing,
Sing to the
sing,
Father,
sing,
love
sing.
within.
Now let us
Sing
sing,
to the
sing,
Father,
sing,
love
sing.
within.
Lift up your voice, be not afraid. Now let us sing to the power of the love within. Now let us sing,
Sing to the
sing,
Father,
sing,
joy
sing.
within.
Now let us sing,
Sing to the
sing,
Father,
sing,
joy
sing.
within.
Lift up your
Lift up your
voice, be not afraid. Now let us sing to the power of the joy within.
For our meditation today, I'd like to share some words written by Bell Hooks. A commitment to spiritual life necessarily means we embrace the eternal principle that love is all, everything, our true destiny. Despite overwhelming pressure to conform to the culture of lovelessness, we still seek to know love. That seeking is itself a manifestation of divine spirit. Life-threatening nihilism abounds in contemporary culture, crossing the boundaries of race, class, gender, and nationality. At some point, it affects all of our lives. Everyone I know is at times brought low by feelings of depression and despair about the state of the world. Knowing love, or the hope of knowing love, is the anchor that keeps us from falling into that sea of despair. My belief that God is love, that love is everything, our true destiny, sustains me. I affirm these beliefs through daily meditation and prayer, through contemplation and service, through worship and loving kindness. All awakening to love is spiritual awakening. In the silence, let us rest for a time and awake to love. Our reading today comes from All About Love, New Visions, Chapter 4, Commitment. Commitment to truth-telling lays the groundwork for openness and honesty that is the heartbeat of love. When we can see ourselves as we truly are and accept ourselves, we build the necessary foundation for self-love. We've all heard the maxim, if you do not love yourself, you're unable to love anyone else. Yet more often than not, we feel some degree of confusion when we hear this statement. The confusion arises because most people who think they are not lovable have this perception because at some point in their lives they were socialized to see themselves as unlovable by forces outside their control. We are not born knowing how to love anyone, either ourselves or somebody else. However, we are born able to respond to care. As we grow, we can give and receive attention, affection, and joy. Whether we learn how to love ourselves and others will depend on the presence of a loving environment. Self-love cannot flourish in isolation. So at some point, and to be honest, I can't remember whether it was high school, college, or seminary, someone helped me realize that the things I had read to that point were heavy on dead white guys and really light on black women. I mean, we looked at Ain't I a Woman by Sojourner Truth in history class, and I'd read Beloved by Toni Morrison and The Color Purple by Alice Walker, but that was pretty much it. So I remember spending an entire summer correcting the imbalance. I dove into Zora Neale Thurston, Audre Lorde, Maya Angelou, Ntozake Shange, Octavia Butler, and Bell Hooks. Now, one of the reasons I think it may have been earlier rather than later is I remember feeling a little uncomfortable with the earthiness of some of the poems that I read that summer. But be that as it may, Bell Hooks' writings are absolutely foundational to my own understanding of how to do the work of unraveling racism and oppression, not to mention how to approach life in general. Much more importantly, they've transformed society as a whole. If you have ever had conversations about representation in media, objectification of the other, cultural appropriation, decolonization, collective liberation, you've been touched and transformed by the brilliance of Bell Hooks. All of these concepts are clear, natural, and logical outgrowths of what Hooks called the love ethic. She writes in Outlaw Culture, "Without love, our efforts to liberate ourselves and our world community from oppression and exploitation are doomed. As long as we refuse to address fully the place of love in struggles for liberation, we'll not be able to create a culture of conversion where there is a mass turning away from an ethic of domination." Hooks envisions a world built on the love ethics. She imagines a time when all children grow up safe and supported, their individuality celebrated in person, but reinforced by a vast array of caring and complex media portrayals. I think we're seeing some progress on this front. Hollywood is telling more stories about different communities and cultures, showcasing more of the richness and depth of human experience. And schools, when they're allowed, are becoming more mindful of representation as they choose books for their libraries. So, as an act of love, we can continue to use our power to make a more inclusive and loving environment for all children. Supporting gender affirming healthcare is an act of love for trans and genderqueer kids. Challenging narratives that center white experience and white history and choosing to tell the truth about our national history of violence and oppression is an act of love for kids living with intergenerational trauma. Lifting up stories of resilience, accomplishment, and courage by people who hold historically marginalized identities is an act of love that offers possibilities to kids who might otherwise have a hard time finding hope. As Hooks puts it, in an ideal world, we would all learn in childhood to love ourselves. We would grow being secure in our worth and value, spreading love wherever we went, letting our light shine. She continues, if we did not learn self-love in our youth, there is still hope. The light of love is always in us. The path that light illuminates is one of deepening self-love, first and foremost. Self-love, she writes, is the foundation of our loving practice. Giving ourselves love, we provide our inner being with the opportunity to have the unconditional love we may have always longed to receive from someone else. Whenever we interact with others, the love we give and receive is always necessarily conditional, largely because we cannot exercise control over the behavior of someone else, and we cannot predict or utterly control our responses to their actions. We can, however, exercise control over our own actions. We can give ourselves the unconditional love that is the grounding for sustained acceptance and affirmation. When we give this precious gift to ourselves, we're able to reach out to others from a place of fulfillment and not from a place of lack. I think about it this way. I want the whole world to be perfectly loving, just, supportive, honest, and kind. It's not, though, and I have limited power to make it so. However, I have an almost unlimited power to be just, supportive, honest, and kind, at least in the privacy of my own mind. As I start turning outward, things get messy, to be sure, but if I fail to begin, however imperfectly, in the place of integrity and unconditional self-love, my work in the world will be ineffective, because I can't live the truth that love is everything if I don't feel the truth that love is everything. Now, of course, none of us are perfect. We can't know what we don't know, and sometimes even when we do know, we still mess up. But rather than yielding to the spiral of shame and blame, we can choose to act with love for ourselves and others. If someone tells us that our words or actions are hurtful or offensive to them, we might naturally feel defensive, but the loving response is gratitude. Thank you. Thank you for caring enough about our relationship to tell me that my words or actions fell short for you. From a natural feeling of care and concern, we change our behavior as an act of love. We use the correct pronouns. We avoid racist and ableist language. We make our buildings accessible. We listen. We love. And from a feeling of connection and compassion, we find the collective will to change. Lisa?
John Poole kindly let me know that I forgot to introduce myself when I read our opening words. I'm so sorry. Good morning. I'm Lisa Salisbury. I'm a longtime member of the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Palouse, and I was honored to be invited by Reverend Elizabeth today to share some thoughts about the work of bell hooks. So I was first introduced to bell hooks in 2005, shortly after I started working at the University of Idaho Women's Center. Tucked into the back of our student staff handbook, we had a list of recommended readings for our work study students to help familiarize them with feminist scholarship and also to help them contextualize their own experiences within the work of gender equity. And so Bell Hooks' Feminism is for Everybody was on the list and on the shelves of the Women's Center Library, in addition to other feminist classics like A Vindication of the Rights of Women by Mary Wollstonecraft, The Feminine Mystique by Betty Friedan, Outrageous Acts and Everyday Rebellions by Gloria Steinem, and Women, Race, and Class by Angela Davis. So this book, Feminism is for Everybody, was just sitting there on the shelves. It was a slim, unassuming volume with some visually appealing cover art. And I slipped it into my backpack intending to read it that weekend. I settled down to read the book on a drizzly gray Saturday in October, and I was completely enthralled. I finished the book in a matter of hours. So Hook's explanations of the feminism that she knew and lived versus the stereotypes of feminism that abound in the media and popular culture, which is so refreshing to me. They made so much sense, and they were rooted in the very ideas and concepts that I wanted to be able to clearly articulate to others. Hook said that from the moment that she embraced feminism as a personal philosophy and worldview, that she longed for some kind of resource that she could share with the people that she loved, just to explain simply and clearly the ways that feminism guided her life. And this is the book that she wrote for that purpose. And like most of the work that she produced, it was firmly and unapologetically grounded in an ethic of love. In the chapter To Love Again, the Heart of Feminism, Hooks emphasizes a genuine feminist politics always brings us from bondage to freedom, from lovelessness to loving. Hooks was a brilliant thinker and a prolific author. She published more than 40 books and book chapters and dozens of academic and mainstream articles throughout her life. Now, I haven't read anywhere near close to all of them, but I have returned to her work repeatedly throughout my professional and personal life to help inform and shape my thinking around the different issues that it's had particular relevance to. So as I got deeper into my job and I began to develop and hone my teaching skills, I turned to Hook's work, Teaching to Transgress, Education as the Practice of Freedom, in search of an emancipatory pedagogical practice. Hooks was deeply influenced by the work of scholar and thought leader Paulo Freire, and she explores the institutional and structural inequities reproduced by our current education system. Her book is a call to educators to challenge and revolutionize their teaching practice, to dismantle dominant systems of power and privilege within our schools. Like Freire, Hook saw education as a practice of freedom. Teaching, she maintained, is not a neutral endeavor, but a political act, a fact that seems incredibly relevant today, particularly in Idaho right now, even though she wrote this book almost 30 years ago. I'm currently in the final stages of completing my PhD in education at the University of Idaho. My dissertation topic is focused on exploring the development of anti-racist allyship among white feminist identified women. Tragically, as hard as feminism tries to present itself as a movement for everybody, the feminist movement in the US and in many other settler colonial nations has a deeply troubled history of racism and white supremacy. As I mentioned earlier, I'm part of a small group of white feminist identified professionals from women's centers around the country who've been engaging intentionally in a community of practice around examining our own racism and racist assumptions as they relate to our work. Inspired by the teachings of scholars and thought leaders like Bell Hooks, scholars and thought leaders of color specifically, we've grounded our anti-racism work in an ethic of deep love. Love for ourselves, love for one another, love for our community, and yes, even love for our oppressors. As part of the work I'm doing with this group, I've just finished reading All About Love, the first volume in Bell Hooks' trilogy, Love Song to the Nation. Hooks describes the uncertainty, fear, grief, and rage that have often come to characterize our interactions with one another when misunderstanding, disagreement, or conflict is present because of the absence of love. The transformative power of love is not fully embraced in our society, Hook writes, because we often believe that torment and anguish are our natural condition. This assumption seems to be affirmed by the ongoing tragedy that prevails in modern society. In a world anguished by rampant destruction, fear prevails. Fear, Hooks maintains, stands in the way of love. Hooks urges us to love freely, fully, and with abandon, despite the presence of pain and suffering in our lives, because of the power that love has to heal and renew. Challenging and transforming the dynamics of oppression, she insists, can only happen by moving our culture collectively in the direction of love.
Thank you so much, Lisa. One last quote, again from All About Love. To begin by always thinking of love as an action rather than a feeling is one way in which anyone using the word in this manner automatically assumes accountability and responsibility. We're often taught we have no control over our feelings, yet most of us accept that we choose our actions, that intention and will inform what we do. We also accept that our actions have consequences. To think of actions shaping feelings is one way we rid ourselves of conventionally accepted assumptions, such as that parents love their children, or that one simply falls in love without exercising will or choice, that there are such things as crimes of passion, i.e. he killed her because he loved her so much. If we were constantly remembering that love is as love does, we would not use the word in a manner that devalues and degrades its meaning. When we are loving, we openly and honestly express care, affection, responsibility, respect, commitment, and trust. Love is an act of will, a choice in any and all situations to openly and honestly express care, affection, responsibility, respect, commitment, and trust. To live with care, affection, responsibility, respect, commitment, and trust. This is who I want to be, and this is how I want to be in the world. Let's give the last word to Dr. Hooks. Amen, and blessed be. Let's sing together, Love Will Guide Us.
Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night. If you cannot sing like angels, if you cannot speak before thousands, you can give from deep within you. You can change the world with your love. Love will guide us, peace has tried us.
Our closing words come from bell hooks. When angels speak of love. When angels speak of love, they tell us all is union and reunion, dying, reborn again. There's no separation, no end to paradise. We are always present, the ecstatic moving us along each current, each wilderness of spirit, a dedicated path.
It's going to be the first I'm going to do.
There is a love holding me. There is a love holding all that I love. There is a love holding all. I rest in this love. There is a love holding us. There is a love holding all that we love. There is a love holding all. We rest in this love. We rest in this love. We rest in this
Let's say the words together to embody our respective chalice flames. We extinguish this chalice that it might glow gently in our hearts. May it light our paths as we leave this place. May it guide our way until we are together again. So let us go forth then, remembering that love is everything. And if we ground our actions, our choices, and our self-concept in love, we really can't go wrong. We really can't. So thanks again to Lisa for sharing this service with me, and to all of you for being present. Those of you who would like to head out, have a great week, go in peace. And those of you who'd like to stick around for coffee hour, we will put you in breakout rooms in just a moment. And yes, don't forget our tours of the new building this afternoon between 2 and 4. There's still spots if you want to sign up. Go in peace.